What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Cookout here, and you are now tuning into a new video on my channel. But before we get all into the topic for today, I would love it if you did a few things. Hit the like button, share button, subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notifications for whenever I come out with new content on this channel. And then when you are finished, leave me a comment below. That way I can get back to whatever it is that you had to say about this topic. You all voted on this, and now I'm delivering. For today's topic, I want to talk about the trope that I call the White Street Profit Trope. And I want to get into all the details as to how this trope shows up and the different types of sub-tropes that come from it. So let's get into it. Before I talk about the trope, the one thing that I want to dive deep into, which I know a lot of people are burning for me to speak about, is this whole idea of inviting the white person to the cookout and my thoughts on it. So this trope goes directly into that because it showcases the type of white person who typically does get invited to the cookout, or at least the majority of the types of white people who get invited to the cookout, that is. So I think that this is a phrase and a statement that black people need to vastly step away from. And if in 2024, matter of fact, let's say this, in 2025, if you have not fully stepped away from this stereotype, you are one of two things. You either are a child who is too young to understand how stupid you sound, or you are just a big old buttermilk biscuit eating Sambo. It's really just as simple as that. And what I mean by you are a child, you are a person who is not necessarily literally a child, but literally young enough to maybe not realize that what you're doing is silly as hell. But either way, this is some real Sambo shit. There is no reason why black folks should be telling white people they are invited to the cookout for them doing something that is very, very simple. The bare minimum thing that shows any type of respect towards black people. And really, it's not a form of respect. It's really a form of appropriation and mimicry. The reason why whites in the dominant society even do certain acts to get invited to the cookout is because of two reasons. Number one, they're trying to do something that they believe is going to gain them respect and admiration from the black community after all of the years of seeing whites do disrespectful, oppressive, genocidal, murderous, and other horrible things to foundational black Americans and other black people. This shows this idea that they have a level of respect, or at least black people who are, again, flaming Sambos see it that way. So they are, one, trying to gain the respect and the approval of black people. Not because they feel that black people, that they are beneath black people, but simply because of the fact that they want to do the second thing I'm going to name. The second reason why they do this, and this is the ultimate goal, the final goal, that is, of the dominant society, is they act as that person who is invited to the cookout because they want to be able to control black spaces. If black people invite them into their spaces, they can colonize it. Anything that a black person is in, a white person in the dominant society wants to control it. They want to regulate what the people within that do. They also want to appropriate it, and they want to make money from it. They want to profit off of our image. They want to profit off of our behaviors. They want to profit off of the things that we do. They want to make themselves look cool based off of the things that we do. So if they can get in good, they can get our approval and all this other stuff, then they can get in and they can use what we have because we have accepted them. So this whole idea of inviting us to the cookout from their end is a way for them to seize control of a black space. The opposite side, which is these silly, goofy ass Negroes letting white folks in, is done because they highly value white acceptance. If they let these individuals in, they will accept them for who they are and what they've done and what they've created. That is why there is an innate and an instinctive desire for these black people to basically have white people's approval. They want white people to accept that what they do is something that is cool. To them, that's a sign of that white person accepting them and also in some ways not being racist towards them. So that's why they invite them. They want to find that white person who is different from the rest. So that's why they like to get into this type of bullshit. That's why you see these silly ass Negroes who will sit there and cheer on and you go boy and all this other shit to these white people who are singing rap lyrics, or they do a silly ass dance, or they say something that we've said before. They use our vernacular. They do that because they ultimately know that they are they crave the acceptance of this white person who has done this. Now, when it comes to the White Street Profit Trope, we really need to talk about that. The White Street Profit Trope denotes a white person who has created and personified themselves to assimilate something related to black people or something that black society would accept. Or at least in their minds, it's something that they believe that black people would accept. So a lot of times they pose as individuals who typically would be honored by black society, which would include musicians or the look of a musician, thugs. Sometimes that would be, social justice warriors and things like that. So these are individuals who essentially want to be those who are respected. And they're called a street prophet because they have street cred with black people. So a lot of times these white people are going to assimilate a role and somewhat of an act that is something that they believe that black people are going to adore them for. Now, I believe that there are two sub-tropes that come with this trope. And we really need to dissect both of them. I may even do a separate video to talk about them individually and more in depth, but I want to give you all a good base of what I'm talking about so you understand the different ways this trope shows up. The first sub-trope within the White Street Profit trope is what I would call the yo, 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 homie, yo sub-trope. And this yo, 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 homie, yo sub-trope is probably the more popular of the two, the one that you see quite a bit more than the other one I'm going to discuss. This trope actually can show up in a couple different ways. So a good example just visually of an individual that typically falls into this would be somebody like a Michael Rappaport and then Gary Owens. They kind of have that yo, 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 homie, yo, yo, yo type of gimmick. Like they're almost like the white person who's trying to come off like they're black. And, they'll do certain things. Sometimes they'll put a little extra Laurie seasoning into that voice and try to sound a little bit like black people. They'll get into rap. They'll get into R&B. They may even lay up with a couple black honeys. They do a couple different things that try to personify themselves as an individual who has assimilated themselves to black culture. And the reality is that this is all an act. They're trying to make it seem like this is a way of showing appreciation when this is really a way of showing imitation and, again, mimicry. That's why it's appropriation. Now, when it comes to the yo, 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 homie, yo, you have two different personalities for this yo, 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 homie, yo. One personality that you may see is one that's very silly, one that's very jokey, one that almost comes off like a circus clown. So you'll see that in almost like a Malibu's Most Wanted, and then in the Dr. Thugonomics gimmick that John Cena first had when he originally was in WWE during the Attitude Era. So when he first kind of came onto the scene, before he had his first gimmick that people just don't know about and forget about, he had that Dr. Thugonomics gimmick. That was kind of like that yo, 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 homie, yo, where it almost was like a joke. It was silly. It was funny. It was something that people just thought like, what the hell is this shit? So that's one way that it shows up. Another way that you typically see it is in a more serious fashion. And a good example of this would be B-Rabbit from 8 Mile. See, B Rabbit from 8 Mile wasn't a clown. He wasn't jokey or anything like that. He was just a white boy who had assimilated himself and almost tried to associate himself with things that we typically do in black culture. And one of the things, and I'll get into this in maybe another video just so you all kind of see where I'm coming from with this. The whole movie 8 Mile, just in general, if you all really weren't paying attention, is not a movie that you can take literally. The movie 8 Mile was really about gatekeeping. And the movie was about demonizing gatekeeping, as if black people gatekeeping their culture was a bad thing. So they told you the bad version, the bizarro world version of the way that gatekeeping shows up, when that's not exactly why gatekeeping is the way that it is. So they had these black villains in the free world terrorizing this white boy who all he was trying to do was to become a rap artist and, do, what he does best. And he can show that he's just as good, if not better, in the case of the movie, better than these black rappers who are doing their thing. So they essentially used him as a moniker to show that this yo character is not just somebody who is a silly ass clown, but it's somebody who is to be taken very seriously. And 8 Mile was the first jump into that. And because it was such a big movie with somebody like Eminem, who was a good symbol for this, it was something that people really took at face value and said, you know what? It is cool for white people to be in the culture. Those Negroes are wrong for the way they treated this white boy. So it kind of set the tone where that's what you as the audience was supposed to believe. Now, even if you look at the real life example of Eminem himself, let's be real. I like Eminem. I do. But Eminem is as popular as he is because he's white. Let's just be clear about that. And that's because a lot of black people like to think of this white person who has done something that is culturally something that we have done, and they've excelled and they've made themselves different in that regard. So they like to honor individuals who are able to showcase that. And Eminem was able to do that. But even if you listen to Eminem, a lot of his lyrics are very different than the lyrics that we hear from a lot of black rap artists and things like that. You have some of the gutter culture where you hear them talking about drugs and women and things like that, which, let's be real, a lot of that is propagated because the dominant society owns these record labels and they push for these black rappers and other artists to put out this type of content, and they do a little dangling carrot thing. We'll give you Negroes money if you talk about drugs and gangs and all this other shit, right? But then you also have these black rappers who are very conscious. They talk about real social issues, or at least I want to take it a step back. Sometimes they're not conscious. They talk about conscious things, and they create a conscious aesthetic, or they talk about real life issues of police brutality, issues of being held back as a black man. They talk about all these different types of things as well too. But Eminem, when you listen to him, he kind of has a different swagger. Like, he talks about weird things. He makes little corny and silly noises and stuff like that, and then he has it where he talks about, how he hates his mama. And we all know that black men, for the most part, love their mamas. So it just is a different vibe. So you can just even tell that it's just not the same even in that regard. Again, that's not a diss to Eminem. I'm just simply saying that you can tell that it's different. And as a result of him being different, that being white, he's propagated up by the community. So the yo, like I said, can take a very silly ass turn, but he also can be very serious, or she in some cases. Sometimes the yo is not really a person. Sometimes it's just a behavior. Sometimes you see yo isms when you see a lot of white people in the dominant society, when they make little jokes and they say vernacular and things like that are similar to things that we would say, whether you're a black woman or black man, or specifically in foundational black American culture. And they use that as either material to market something or their own products, or they'll use our music or whatever the case may be, or they may just say it in social banter because, it's something that we kind of came up with and they're trying to, make it cool for them as well too. A lot of times you see this, for example, with the sapphire sub-trope. If you all don't know what a sapphire is, that is this trope that exemplifies a black woman who is very feisty and a black woman who like berates, people, a black woman who basically just crashes out all the damn time. Like she's very aggressive. She's very like verbally abusive. She has a sharp ass tongue. She has a slick ass mouth. And sometimes like they'll say stuff, especially like a lot of like the white LGBT and people like that. They'll say little things that like these kind of feisty black women will say, and they'll use that as their vernacular, but more so as a joke and that type of thing. When these sisters are very serious when they're sitting there ranking off on a motherfucker. So I'm saying all that to basically say that they typically take, that vernacular and they kind of do a yo at some points, either to be seen as socially funny or to be to create it as a marketing campaign that gets them more money. The other sub-trope of the White Street Profit is what I would call the white woke. Now, this one is one that doesn't show up as frequently, but there is a pattern of this showing up. And this trope is a lot like the white savior trope, but the big difference is that this trope tends to involve a social justice warrior, whereas the white savior trope, that individual typically isn't a social justice warrior. As a matter of fact, they're usually an open white supremacist, or they're a former white supremacist or reformed white supremacist, whatever you want to call it, who now is trying to present themselves as somebody who wants to help black people. So the difference between that is somebody who talks about justice and the history and things that have happened to black people and atrocities versus somebody who was at first real racist their damn selves, but are trying to show that they're turning a new leaf. So these are two different concepts. But anyway, the white woke is an individual who portrays themselves as somebody who is talking about empowerment. They almost are somebody who you want to call pro-black, but of course a white person cannot be pro-black. Pro-blackness is for black people. And let's be real. What white person has ever made black people a priority in every area of activity? I'll wait. When it comes to the white woke, this is an individual who loves to talk about social justice, usually for black people, but they'll talk about social justice altogether. So good examples of this would be like a Tim Wise or a Jane Elliott. A lot of times this so-called white woke says a lot of the shit that a lot of previous black activists, pro-black leaders, and other individuals who talk about black empowerment have said in the past, but have been called a hotep, or have been called radical, or have been called militant, or whatever the case may be. But as soon as this motherfucker steps onto the scene, the first thing Negroes want to say is, "Oh, you're being so real. I like it. She's invited to the cookout. I fuck with her." They go into all of that because they heard this white person say the same shit that a lot of other black leaders have said before too, but are being demonized, scrutinized, hyper-criticized, and everything else in between. I especially can't stand that trick, Jane Elliott, that old wrinkled bitch. I cannot stand her at all. A lot of y'all like her because you think that she's cool because she gives it to white people. But just like every other white woke, these white people do what they do because they consider it a hobby. This is something that they can remove themselves from whenever they willingly want to. And this is something they ultimately have made profits off of. A lot of people who are in this white woke culture have even done things such as, disparage individuals like Frances Cress Welsing, or they've even talked down about reparations. So now we're going to go back to your homegirl, Jane Elliott. Jane Elliott has talked all this shit about the blue eye experiment and, giving accountability to white people and basically just giving it to them and all this other shit. But when it came to reparations, she was the first person to talk down about reparations. Then all of a sudden it was, we're all humans. There's no such thing as race. There's just the human race. We should just start over with a clean slate. And ultimately, one thing that you have to realize about a lot of these white wokes like Jane Elliott is that they are communal narcissists. And before a lot of you all go on and start whining about me using the term communal narcissist, I am not a psychologist. psychiatrist, therapist, or any other clinician who deals with the mental health area. So I just want to make that very, very clear. But you can just look this up online. A communal narcissist is an individual who likes to present themselves as an individual who is justice oriented. You know, they do a lot of great work. They're very hospitable. They're somebody who is very humanitarian like, and they like to present themselves as such to a lot of people on the outside. But then to the people who they actually deal with, they treat them like trash. They treat them like dirt. You can look it up yourself. This is a real term. But what my point is that individuals like the Janeelliot exhibit those types of traits because what they tend to do is get a lot of notoriety from the individuals that they tend to defend, or they seem like they're defending. So in this case, that's black folks. So black folks now are saying that Janeelliot is somebody who is a hero who has helped the community. And that emboldens her to do things such as talking down to a lot of other black people who are doing justice-oriented things. That's why she got on this brother Emmanuel's podcast, the Socks and Sandals podcast, and was talking down to him when it came to reparations, because he was talking about how black people should get reparations, and she was, you know, kind of snapping, and she was kind of making slick comments and interrupting him and being rude, and then basically talking about how, you know, we need to give it to the natives first, which, you know, those are the same natives that have literally colonized black people as well. The red natives we're talking about here, they've also colonized black people. She's talking about them. These are the same red natives who have actually gotten checks, who have gotten different forms of reparations. These are the people who she's saying should get them first. And then she literally, again, did a 180 and started talking about how, well, you know, there's no such thing as race. It's just the human race. So she essentially was just throwing shit at a wall and seeing what stuck. But the ultimate goal was to deviate from her believing that black people deserved reparations and that they should give them, and that she would be a proponent for getting black people reparations. So all this bullshit talk about justice really is fruitless, because ultimately she doesn't want to create real justice, which is giving checks back to black people so that we can create a better society, not just for ourselves, but just in general. She basically said that we don't deserve any of that, because her thing is that we need to just start over with a clean slate as we are, which is ridiculous. And she's done this on multiple platforms now at this point. So it shows you now that, again, she's been emboldened to feel like she can actually speak up for what we need. She can speak up for my people, for foundational black Americans. Hell, she even deflected when Emmanuel brought up the point that we needed to get reparations at the highest priority. And she tried to make it seem like we sounded like white supremacists, or at least Emmanuel sounded like a white supremacist, saying that we needed to get reparations urgently and we should be the first people to really get it now that checks have been given to people such as the Native Americans. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, you deflecting bitch. No, you're the white supremacist, Janeelliot. You're the white supremacist who comes into our spaces talking all this social justice, liberal white bullshit, and then literally acting like a white supremacist trying to tell us what we need for our community, and almost getting mad and angry and insulted. Like, oh, how dare you? How dare we tell you what the fuck we need for our community? Like you or any of your ancestors have been a part of our community and have suffered the atrocities that our ancestors have suffered. How dare we tell you what we need for our community? I don't want to go on a tangent of Janeelliot. I'm just making the point that these are the types of individuals that the white woke show up as. They have been emboldened to get into black society and talk about the things that they believe that we need. And they feel that it is their right and not only their duty, but also their right to talk about what has happened to us and what we need to do going forward for our community. Because we have also allowed her to come in and say whatever she wants, and we just honor her and kiss her old, wrinkled, flat, white ass. It's ridiculous. All right, you all. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you all enjoyed what I had to say and learned something. But I'll definitely have more to come, so make sure that you stay tuned. Other than that, I hope y'all have a good rest of y'all's night, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.